Mobile Legends' pool of meta heroes quickly changes through time, as high-tier players of the game discover more heroes that effectively suits today's game styles. One of these heroes is Shin. Shin has a role of a marksman and an assassin hero due to his combat style that tends to resemble an assassin hero. The damage output and efficiency that he produces from early game to late game are the main reasons why he gets so much attention. So for today's episode, we will learn how to use his skills and how to play him more effectively so you can carry your team to victory. So without further ado, I'm Enzo and this is Yugatech Gaming. Before everything, let's see the emblem spells and build that we can use for Shin. Here is the build that we can use. Remember that the last two items, which are the Queen's Wings and Wind of Nature, are optional depending on the game situation and can be replaced by defensive items. But on the other hand, the Blade of Despair and Endless Battle are his core items. For the Emblem Talent, I recommend using the Killing Spree talent. This talent is good for Shin so he can be aggressive in team fights. Because remember, he is still a melee assassin. And the HP that this Emblem Talent gives when he kills an opponent is very helpful for him to last between team fights. For the spells, we recommend you use Purify so you can increase his survival in the game. Retribution is also good so you can take objectives faster since he's still a marksman. And lastly, Flicker for escaping or chasing down enemies. And now let us analyze Shin's skills by starting with his passive skill. His passive skill changes the way he attacks according to his distance on the target. He can be a melee hero when he's close to his target, or when he's distant, he can shoot his arrows. After each weapon swap, his next two basic attacks will be enhanced. These next two basic attacks are critical damage and can also give Shin an additional movement speed. Each enhanced basic attack reduces the cooldown of Shin's first skill. His passive can also transform the allied base into a naval fleet which Shin can board. This turtle ship grants Shin additional movement speed for a short period of time and enhances his first skill. Using skills or the glaive attack will impose the bleeding effect on the enemies, injuring them and dealing true damage to moving enemies and slowing them down. This is a bonus for a marksman to have a melee basic attack with a bleed effect. The amazing part of this passive is that you can slow down enemies with a bleed as well. All of your abilities have a bleed effect, which means a slow as well. The slow isn't huge, but it can trigger items like Blade of Despair. You can abuse his passive by repeatedly swapping his weapon so you can deal more damage. By doing this, you will have an advantage in the early game and also you can farm and take objectives faster, especially when you have your jungle item. Remember that it's easy to swap weapons when you're using it against jungle monsters and minions, but sometimes difficult to trigger at enemies, especially when they are mobile. So I recommend that you take advantage of his passive at enemy heroes so you can deal more damage to them, specifically at the early game. Shin's first skill is a blink skill. This skill slashes forward at an aim direction, dealing damage. Enemies can be slowed when hit by this skill. Also, while dashing, he is immune to crowd controlling skills and gains about 30% of damage reduction, which makes this skill special. When in game, you can reduce the cooldown of this skill by repeatedly swapping weapons. Also use this skill's damage reduction capability and crowd control immunity to be aggressive between team fights. This way, you will pressure the enemies and deal more damage to them. Always try to gap or kite enemies as much as possible. The only downside is that the cooldown isn't fast, like Moskov's gap closing ability, but you can always reduce it by triggering his passive. While on the turtle ship, you can stun targets and deal physical damage, which is a good thing for ganking. Now for his second skill. There are two ways to use this skill. One is without charging and the other one is charging. He slashes enemies in the path and deals damage. When the skill is charged, Shin will shoot an arrow. Remember that the damage this skill produces scales with the charging duration. This skill is important, especially in the early game, as this will make you clear lanes fast and pressure your enemies in your lane. To use this skill, it is important to manually aim it, as this skill has a thin range when charged as an arrow. I do recommend that you max this skill first and hold it longer for higher range and damage. Lastly, for his third skill, when activated, the damage that he gains from his passive will increase. This skill lets you command the naval fleet to launch 3 waves of precise cannon attacks to all enemy heroes in the map. When a target is hit by multiple waves, an additional damage will be dealt. Enemies that are hit will also get slowed by 20%. This skill is also useful at team fights and will predict your enemy's rotation, as this skill also gives vision to your enemies on the map. The damage that this skill produces isn't that much, but it's good for harassing and getting last hits at the enemies or finishing attacks. But take note, there is no guarantee that you will hit your enemies, especially when they have boot items. But it can be really powerful when enemies are standing together, especially in team fights. Shin is just like any other marksman. You can solo mid or funnel him if you want to. Side lanes are fine as well. Start with either tier 1 jungle item for more experience on jungle monsters, or magic necklaces for mana regeneration. Whenever you hit level 4, try to pay attention more to the map so you will know what's going on. You can help your teammates in a fight with your ultimate skill or picking off last hits and get yourself a lead. But don't be greedy, wait until your team is done. Use it as soon as possible whenever they are about to clash in a mini team fight. When your turtle ship is available, don't hesitate to board it and look for ganks. It could be deadly with your team follow-up. Take advantage of the early game with your abilities, as this is one of Shin's strengths. Also, I highly encourage a 5 vs 5 instead of a split lanes and push. You do not want to reach late game with Shin. Every other marksman outshines and outscales him. It's best to end the game as soon as possible before the enemies get their core items or endgame items. His ultimate is extremely powerful in team fights, especially when enemies are sticking close together. You will most likely win in a fair 5 vs 5 team fight most of the time. But when it comes to the endgame, it's almost impossible to outdamage other marksmen. Don't be frustrated. If Shin isn't your playstyle, you could always try another one. As the saying goes, you'll never know until you try. So that ends this video. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and don't forget to visit yugatech.com/gaming for more news, tips, and tricks. It's your boy Enzo, and stay safe.